Hello everyone, and welcome back to part 5 of the Krunker GFX Lounge Blender tutorial series. In this part, we will learn about rendering. So here, in the scene that we have set up over the past 4 videos, we have our scene, our guy, but we do not have an actual image that we can use. And rendering is that process where we take the scene that we've made and we export it, calculate the lighting and everything into an actual image. So here we are in our scene, and the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take the spotlight that we put behind him, we're going to put it in front of him, because the sunlight is actually kind of already illuminating his back. I want to kind of light up his front. I'm just going to rotate it 180 degrees, then kind of move it so that it's kind of lighting up like in front of him a little bit, like that. Alright, beautiful. Okay, the next thing I'm going to do is notice that now, because I'm in my viewport shading and with my scene lights and scene we're on, we don't actually have any environment. We don't have a sky, and this is because the default world is like kind of this gray color. If you go to this world tab, which is this red globe that says world properties, it's default like this. So we're going to have to find ourselves an environment. And to do that, first things you can do is you can press the yellow circle here, much like how you replace the image texture. You're going to click it and select environment texture. And that should turn everything purple. And then hit open right here. And then go into wherever you have Blender installed. So for me, that's in Documents, Blender. You click on Blender, and then you're going to click on your version number, Data Files, Studio Lights, World, and here you have a set of standard HDRIs that come packaged with Blender, except for this one. This one is one that I have, but these other ones, these other 8 that you see, you should have. So for this one, we're going to be using a plain one because we don't really want any like real trees in there. That would kind of mess up the illusion of Krunker. So we're just going to pick a sunrise. It's a nice like clear sky. And once we open that up, you can see that our lighting immediately changes. We kind of have this bright sky, sun, and everything now. So that will change the look of our render and make it look a lot better. The next thing we're going to do is actually set up our camera. So you may remember that in our starting file, we have our camera, and if I click on it, I don't actually know where that is. So to find your camera, you're going to first press N to open your side panel. Go to View. Once again, your side panel will not be as crowded as mine. View, which should be the third from the top, and press Lock Camera to View. Alright. And then, after you've done that, you can press 0 on the numpad, and that will take you to where your camera is. Now, right now, my camera is probably staring into the inside of a wall somewhere because we imported our map and moved it around, so it's probably lost somewhere. So press 0 again, take us out of camera view and back to our viewport. So now I'm just going to look around the viewport and kind of find a suitable angle for this one. Kind of like, so it looks like this, right? Puts him in the center, but has like the entire like map in the background. I'm now going to hit Control Alt numpad 0, and that aligns your camera directly to your viewport, so you don't have to finagle with moving your camera around and any of that. So this works anywhere. So if I go back out of camera view and I just look at it like this, bam, that moves my camera immediately to where I'm looking. And you can know that you're in your camera because you have this kind of frame set up. So let me go back to that view that we had. It's kind of like this. Let me adjust it again. Alright, so another thing you might have noticed is the camera is quite narrow, and what we're going to do is select the camera. It should be in that second collection that you made, and then you go down to this tab here, press the camera properties tab, and here you see all the camera settings. The first things we're going to do is we're going to keep it at perspective. We're going to change the focal length, change the units to field of view, and the field of view to something like 60. So you can see right now, field of view is 40, which isn't really representative of what you would see in an actual game. And to make it look more congruent with that, I'm going to change it up to something like 60. It's still pretty narrow, but it gives us a bit of a wider view here. More perspective. Alright. Sorry. And once I've done that, I'm going to go down here and check depth of field. So that means that you can select a focus object, and things that are far away from that focus object will be a little bit blurred, which gives a kind of like cinematic effect. So if I check that, it's going to take a second, and then I click down here and focus on objects. So normally it would look like this. What you want to do is select the eyedropper and then click on the head, and that will put the head in focus. And then what I can do is take this f-stop, which I think by default is 2.8. I can lower this, because the lower the number, the more defocus there is. I'm going to lower it to 0.3. And that means that things that are kind of far away are really blurry. So if I set this like 0.1, you can like see the difference in like the background, like the walls of undergrowth, and the sign is really blurry. But I don't want quite that much blur, so I'm going to set that to 0.3, and that way the sign is kind of still like legible and all that. Alright, that is that for the camera settings. So now we're going to talk about some Blender settings that you need to change. So, and this kind of depends on what kind of GPU you have. So, first situation, you have a discrete graphics card, which means you have an actual physical card. You don't have something like integrated graphics, like an Intel Iris, something like that. You have like an actual AMD or NVIDIA GPU. So, in any case, you're going to go up to Edit, Preferences, and you're going to go to System. And here, in Cycles Render Devices, should be the first thing that pops up when you click System. Default is none, but if you have no discrete graphics card, which means you haven't integrated, you're going to keep it at none. But if you have an actual graphics card, if you have an NVIDIA RTX graphics card, you're going to choose CUDA or optics. It's a technical difference between them. Both of them work fine for me. You're going to click whichever one you want and make sure that you select your actual graphics card. And if you have an AMD card, then you would select HIP. And since I don't have an AMD card, it doesn't show up here, but if you did, it would show up there. Alright. So, that's that for the Blender settings. You can close that. And so when it says cycles in those settings, it means the cycles render engine. So we can go back and change our render engine to cycles. So you go up to the top tab, which is your render properties tab. Your render engine is currently set to Eevee, which is the default in a new scene. And that will give us a look like this, kind of a cartoony, the lights aren't super accurate. So you can see that if I go into render view, which is this last tab here, or press Z and go up, the render looks exactly like the material preview. That's because material preview uses Eevee. But this isn't going to give you the best looking lighting. So I'm going to stay in render view, but then I'm going to change, actually I'm going to go back to material preview, and I'm going to change this to cycles. And then here, you're going to want to change the device to whatever you have. So if you don't have a discrete graphics card, if you just have an integrated, you're going to have to leave this at CPU. But if you have an actual GPU like me, make sure you select GPU, because the GPU is much better at doing calculations like this. So that's the GPU. And now if I switch up to render mode, give it a second, it's going to calculate the lights, because Cycles is a ray tracing engine, which means it calculates the rays of light and how they bounce off surfaces, which is what an RTX graphics card does. Alright, and now down here you can go into samples. So the default samples are 1024 right here, and I think 4096 here. But a sample is basically one calculation of light rays bouncing. And the more samples you do, the more accurate your render will be, and generally the better it will look, and also the less noisy it will be. More samples is generally better looking for a render, but also takes more time. So for right now, we're going to set both of these numbers to 256, so that the render doesn't take too much time. And you can check denoise. So in render. So you can see right now we're in the viewport, and we don't have denoise checked. If I check denoise, it denoises my render, and so you don't have that noise anymore. And it will do that when it renders as well. Alright. And one last thing, if you stay in here, you scroll all the way down to color management. Set your look to medium high contrast. This tends to make things look a little bit better. Of course, this depends on your situation. Like, I think for this, like medium high contrast looks better. And of course, you can always change this after you edit the image. Alright, let me find a good camera angle. Maybe make this light, select this light here, a little bit brighter. Move it a little bit closer to him. Go. Alright, and that's it for our scene. This looks good to me. So to actually render, first thing is I'm going to turn off the rendered view because that's consuming power and resources. So to render, you either press F12 or you go up to render here and render image. You can see it says F12. I'm just going to press F12. It's going to pop up a new render window. And it's just going to, once again, load up. And you can see it shows you your sample number, and then how long it estimates it will take, and also your memory and stuff like that. Alright, so now the render is finished. That took approximately 30 seconds. As you can see the time here. And then now what we want to do is we want to go up here, press image, save as. And that will save your image to, let me just title this tutorial render.png. Alright, and that's it. You now have your image saved to whatever location you want. Of course, you can always close this render window, go back and change a couple things, change your angle, change your lighting, change your camera, whatever. Alright, that's it for part 5. This is the second to last part. Once again, make sure you watch all the other parts. Part 6 will cover some extra things, some extra tips, and also how to import cosmetics, like different skins, which I'm sure many of you guys will be interested in. Alright, thank you everyone for watching, and have a nice day.